Hey guys, this is Ray from Exclusively Comics, and I want to discuss one of my favorite series that I have recently finished up watching the last episode of Loki. And I want to welcome each and every one of you. I want to give a sort of a warning before this video that it may be controversial to some, but this is my honest review of Loki, and I want to begin by saying that I really enjoyed this series. I loved the character development that was in each character presented in the series. I want to say that I loved the writing and the cliffhangers that was in some of the episodes, and I believe that overall that if you're a comic book fan, you need to watch this series. We're all sometimes want to see action-packed adventures, and at times this series does have that. And as a guy, I love to watch macho action series, but this is not really one of those type of series. It is presented where there is more dialogue in the series. It requires more consistent acting instead of macho bravado, is what I would like to term, in some films. Like we have the Terminator and Rambo films. It is not, in my opinion, too bogged down in the tendencies of what some Hollywood films and TV shows are today that is presented, being too riddled with identity politics and critical race theory. Now, I believe, in my opinion, now these are my opinions, okay, in this review, that reflections of issues that are in society needs to be covered in some shows, and in some instances that art is a reflection of society, and that is my interpretation of what art is. And being my background in education, one of my degrees is in history, and traditionally, particularly in Greek plays, art was a reflection of society, and it has been that way since it has existed. I mean, we have the Hellenistic art, we have, different periods of art. We have Impressionism, we have the Renaissance period, and we have famous artists, poets, writers from those different periods. We have Voltaire and we have Plato, all come from different periods, and we reflect back on them and we try to understand the human experience. And so that is my interpretation of what art is. And I love comic books and comic book characters because it is a melting pot, or it is a reflection upon the whole of society. Me personally, I love the classic characters that's presented in comics. but I realize that society changes, but I want the ideals of that classic hero and my personal preference to still exist as those heroes were produced and or where they were first introduced, but they have to evolve over time. So we come to the character of Loki. Now, Loki, in my opinion, is a really interesting character. He even presented the mythos of Loki, and you can look up. There's channels on YouTube, and I've did a little bit of research on it. From what they said, they do a good job of covering the mythological Loki and how the mythological Loki differs from the Marvel Cinematic Universe Loki. But also, I think that they have done a good job. They meaning the MCU, meaning Marvel, meaning Kevin Feige, trying to bring in a lot of those mythological elements of Loki into the MCU Loki that was derived from Marvel Comics. So we have this Loki that we have character, and it was interesting to me that as we start this, and this is going to be probably a lengthy video or discussion that I'm going to be having here on Loki, because I really believe that there is some depth into this series. I don't agree with a lot of the assessments over Loki that have been made and critics that have been made as a reflection of the series. I want to get into that too. Now, we do have people that just cover the basics and the simplicity of what was presented and what we watched, which I find great, and I'm a fan of those channels and really sort of relate. And then we have those channels that just relate back to the classic Loki character that's presented in Marvel Comics and compare it to the MCU Loki. And of course, there's going to be differences there because the MCU is trying to reach a broader audience other than just comic book fans. So we're left with this character of Loki, and it's unusual, and I find it good in that they have done this character, that they have brought Tom Hiddleston's Loki, as I'm going to refer to this, back to life, and we meet Tom Hiddleston's Loki again at the end of Avengers Endgame, where they set his character up that he escapes with the Tesseract because of the mess up that the Avengers had in retrieving the Tesseract in the Avengers Tower, or Stark Towers. And so we see this at the set of this show is at the end of the original Avengers movie. And so we have to realize that and put that into context. I think that many channels do not get this correct, is that we think of the events that transpire in Loki after Avengers Endgame. Well, actually, those events have not taken place yet for our Loki. And where our Loki, that was years down the road. For our Loki still did not go through Dark World. Our Loki did not go through Ragnarok and was not there in prison for those years during that time period. That during those events that took place, our Loki did not die at the hands of Thanos. The original timeline Loki is the one that went through those events that we saw on the screen. That was the original Loki. Our Loki is a variant of that Loki. And so our Loki is presented to us after those events. Not after those events, before the events of Infinity War and those things take place. Now, I don't know if we don't know exactly how much time transpires between the events of Loki the series and the events of Infinity War. We know that the timelines sort of come together because we're left with the new movies that's going to be coming out, Spider-Man, Far From Home, and Marvel's Doctor Strange, The Multiverse of Madness. The events that happened in Loki, I believe, took place as these events transpired. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I don't think so. But maybe. But anyway, Loki comes to the TVA, the Time Variance Authority, after being captured after he got the Tesseract and was going to go about his Loki ways. He's immediately captured, brought to the TVA. He's arrested, he's brought before, and then he is interrogated, fixing to be pruned, nevertheless, probably. And then Owen Wilson's character, Morpheus, saves him because he has need of Loki to track down another variant of Loki that's wreaking havoc upon the TVA across the different timelines. And so we see this Loki that's before the events. That's before the events. If he went to the dungeon on Asgard, before he went through the events of Dark War, before he went through the events of Ragnarok, we see this Loki still trying to capture his glorious purpose, and that is the personification of Loki and who Loki is. He has not been redeemed yet. He is still this very arrogant character that the ends justify the means. And it is interesting to see this transpire here in these events. I think that this series overall did a good job in carrying out its message to set up Marvel Phase 4 here. And so this Loki goes through this trying to find this variant, and it comes to find out that this variant was Sophie. And she had rejected being called Loki. She didn't like that name, but she was a variant of Loki. And through their misadventures together, and I encourage everyone to go watch this series, because you have to watch the entirety of the series to appreciate the depth of what it covers. And this is just my opinion, but we see this Loki. We see that a character change of where he was. And the whole series is not centrally focused upon Tom Hiddleston's Loki. We have the introduction of various variants of Loki, and in particularly Sophie, which I find to be a fascinating character, and that it also was presented in a balanced way. I believe the story kept us guessing really until the end about what was going to be taking place. And one of the fun things about of this series was trying to guess who the big bad was. I mean, you have that overall theme of the series that, yeah, the Time Variance Authority isn't as heroic as what they seem to be. That there is some sort of sympathy that we can have with the character, the per se perceived first villain that we have of Sophie. And even though she does some fairly bad things, I don't think that we can justify some of the things that she does, you know. But we see the Time Variance Authority and basically wiping out entire universes, universal timelines, so that they can keep one constant almighty timeline. And we get more of the explanation of that during the final episode when the big bad is revealed. I love the Easter eggs that was through this film. I really liked the Easter egg of Throg. I don't know if anybody else wanted him to get Mjolnir or not, but I sure did. I hope that they make it to where they can do that. I like the story arc of what we were presented with classic Loki. It had me going in a completely different direction of who I thought the end boss, I guess we call him boss, because to me it was sort of set up like a video game. And I think that it actually probably would be a good video game. The series season 1 would. And classic Loki had a good storyline. We've seen the potential of how powerful Tom Hiddleston's Loki or Sophie's Loki could be, as far as using illusions and magic, and that got me sort of excited. I like that. I love the fantasy elements, as I have said, in this series. We got to see boastful Loki. I liked his character. We got to see another version of Loki, President Loki. These different things. We don't know what happened to them. I hope we get to see boastful Loki, and I hope we get to see President Loki I hope he becomes Captain Hook Loki. And we got to see Alligator Loki. And also we got to see Kid Loki. And I hope they set up Kid Loki for an eventual Young Avengers series. And he would be a good addition to them. Hope he gets his sword back from Tom Hiddleston. But we will get to see those characters probably in the future. And I want you really to keep an open mind about this review that I have and about the series. I think that it's important that this was a really well-constructed story, I believe. And I know I differ than a lot of people that has been reviewing this on YouTube, but that is my thoughts on this. I look at this story from, I guess, a different point of view. That there were some really deep messages that was in this storyline as we went forward. The writers really sort of discussed some important societal issues that we have in our society today. It is so important in today's writing, especially for TV, that we are inclusive of different individuals, because it's just the right thing to do. And I understand and that people have the right to be critical, that they don't think that Loki, the series of Loki, was too SJW type written. But you can't be really so shallow in your review of this series, I don't believe, because there is deep meanings of what I found the context in which it was written. There were the critics say, and some critics say, that they were bored and that the series the writing was lazy, that the dialogue was lazy, not enough action, not enough, too much dialogue. But I don't think so. That wasn't the purpose of this series. It was a deep dive into the personification of Marvel's Loki and what motivated him and what motivated her, Sophie. And it was very important to bring forth, I think, this character of Sophie. Number one, because as a writer and as a producer, you're producing this for a variety of different people. And you've got to hit those demographics. And it definitely opens the door for merch sales and for a spin-off series with Sophie, because her character, she does a fantastic job. This actress, and I forget her name, and I'm sorry that I do, that portrayed Sophie, she does a fantastic job in exploring the complexity of who she is and exploring her motivations. Also liked that we discover a little bit more of the mythology of what Loki was back during the original myth of Loki. Even though the MCU Loki is completely different than the myth of Loki in Norse mythology, but I'm glad that we brought some elements in. But the dialogue tackles some complex issues, as I said, that deals with our society. And the vehicle, a lot of the times that they used to do this, was Owen Wilson's character through Morpheus. And I haven't watched many movies with Owen Wilson since his comedy run. Uh, but he has really improved with his acting. I will say that. And he really brought to life this character of Morpheus. I mean, I don't know about you, but one of the payoffs at the end of season 1 is wanted to see Morpheus on that jet ski, right? But we didn't get to see that. But it was very important that Morpheus was used as the catalyst to change Tom Hiddleston's Loki into a good person. Isn't that what some of us need? Is that that if it wasn't for some of the people that's in our lives, we wouldn't be and wouldn't have the depth to our character that we do. I'm not saying that people makes us who we are, but thank goodness for the positive influences that are in our lives. And the friendship that developed between Tom Hiddleston's Loki and Morpheus was amazing. And, it was just a cliffhanger. Like, your heart got, like, oh my goodness, Morpheus just died. And he was able to, and it was not only did Morpheus help Tom Hiddleston's Loki, but in the end, Loki helped Morpheus discover his free will and his individuality, and so much and depth is in those characters, and they're so well portrayed and so well acted that you just simply can't. And it's not fair to completely dismiss them as being boring, as being lack of depth, as being no character at all. And it's just not true. And we see that one of the quotes that I liked by Morpheus is he said, even a villain, if he makes the right choices, can choose to be a good person. And wow, how profound was that? That we see that is it never too late for a person to change? And we're not talking about if a person finds faith, or we're talking about these things. What we're talking about is that individual has that free will. And we have two contrasting thoughts of free will here. It is the free will of a person to be able to make the choices to be a better person. And we all have that in our lives. We have that choice to be a better person. And I think that that's what we all should strive to be. That's just the way I feel, is that, that if we choose to be a better person, then we can make the world a better place, one person at a time. I've always been told that. That's the way I was taught. And from my parents. And they said, well, and if you're so pessimistic that you don't think you can do that, then, you know what, I feel sorry for you. But that's the message of what he was trying to say to Loki. Then Loki, in the end, said, you're being used. You're all variants. There's a reason why you have that desire to be on that jet ski. It's because they took you from that. They forced you against your will. And a question of free will is the other strong message here in the series of Loki. Now, everybody wants to focus on the reveal of Loki's sexuality. I want to really put this to rest. Loki has always been represented, even in myth and in the comic books and Marvel stories, as transgender and bisexual. He has. You can look it up. You can research it yourself. It's just the way it is. And that wasn't really the main purpose of the series, but it was very important to identify this in the series because of where we are as a society, and to recognize that Loki's for everybody, no matter who you are or what your preferences are. And it's very important whether you think it's good or whether you think it's bad. Whatever your values are, that's up to you, and it's not for me to judge, and it's not for you to judge me on what I am or what you are. But we need to realize that this traditionally was already set in myth and set in the comic book series, that Loki was transgender, and he was, at times he was a woman, at times he was a man, and, so get over that fact, and don't use that as something when you're doing criticism, because you have no basis on it, because it's already been presented for decades, and in essence thousands of years, that Loki was that. It was amazing. But that wasn't the main thrust, the main message of the series. The main question of the series was a question of free will, and really discussing that point of view and the different dichotomy of what free will is and how it impacts everything. And also the question of, for the character of Loki, it was, can Loki determine his own fate? Morpheus was able to break down those illusions of who Loki was. He said, why do you hurt people? What makes you do the things that you do? You're always going to be, and you're always destined to lose. Loki refused to believe that, even though he lost a lot of times. He still believed within himself that he was destined for glorious purpose. And that comes down to you and me, that no matter how many times we fail, now, and in life, in real life, and doing things in life, not being a demigod, because, that's fantasy. But the message is that no matter how many times we fail, that we always get up and we go forward in our lives. And so we examine those things in Loki. We try to examine why the motivation of why Loki did the things that he did. What did the Loki variants do, and what did the other variants do that we met along the way? What did they do, really? Because to be and to deserve to be pruned and left at the end of time? These are all questions that the viewer has to ask themselves, and then we're sort of given an answer at the end of the series. So, we can look through Loki's motivations and why he did the things of what he did in Avengers. He was a person to where the ends justified his means to get to do them, and because he thought that was the way that he was only going to be able to achieve his goals. And finally, what it was about him trying to find acceptance by his father. He had his stepfather who told him that he wasn't his real father, that he was taken when he was a child, and everything, his world come crashing down and everything, for Loki. So, but it still didn't excuse why he did the things that he did. I mean, we start out the series with Loki, as I said a few moments ago, being this character that his ends justified his means, and being this villain. And we end the series with Loki being this hero who failed, though he was betrayed to the extent he betrayed himself. Nevertheless, he still believed that there was hope. And then we're left with the other main character, Sophie. We see that all she knew was life on the run, that her entire universe, that her entire world, through no fault of her own, had been taken away from her. But still, somewhere along the way, she determined that she was going to choose her destiny. Now, she was motivated by revenge, and her means were not very nice, I would say. But we see that she is this very complex character, and that even though we meet her as a villain, we find out that she's fighting for free will, and she's definitely the anti-hero type. And I am so glad that she was presented in a very strong, well-defined way. Of course, I love strong female characters that are presented in stories. And I think that that it's really egocentrical, that it's really holding on to dead ideas, that some of these people that give such toxic reviews of these stories, trying to get people not to watch the series, that really is sad. And that that any time that something goes wrong in the series, that they want people to unsubscribe to Disney Plus, which I think that's ridiculous. You got to take the story in context. It's just like, was that episode where Loki got pruned, and I was like, oh no, they killed off Tom Hiddleston. All right. Let's see where this goes. It's all right. Let's see how they're going to develop this. If they can continue to go solely with this story of Sophie. Let's see how it develops. Be optimistic and see where they're going with this. Then we get the reveal that Loki wakes up in the void, and that we come to the realization that everything that has been pruned not necessarily is ended. And then we get the story of Annihilith, and then we bring it the story of the one that remains, Immortus. And we see that, that there was more to the story, that it just wasn't, that there was a lot of depth in the writing. You can read, and I'm going to be posting this article that I'm sort of going by and using as a script for this. I was a little bit critical of some of the critics in this article, but I'm not going to discuss that here on YouTube. But I will say that we need to really look at the agenda of what a lot of these critics are trying to spread, and we need to appreciate the art that is being presented from you and for me. I'm not saying that we can't be critical, and there are things about the series that I just didn't get with, but most of it I really thought was really in depth, and I really liked it. I liked that we finally end up, of course I thought that it was going to be, the final boss was going to be another Loki, but it ended up being He Who That Remains, Immortus, who was a throwback to exactly the way the comics were, and just set up Kang the Conqueror, and it was dealt with a lot of issues there, that they found out that their fate, these two variants' fate, had been predetermined by He That Remains, and that in essence that it was to continue the time loop, and that time is not simply one directional, but it's a circle, and that in the MCU it revolves around Nathaniel Richards, He That Remains. And now we have a multiverse that is chaotic, setting up Multiverse of Madness, setting up Spider-Man No Way Home, and there's a lot of possibilities, and I think it's going to be a fun journey, and I look forward to it. And this is sort of my thoughts and my feelings on the story of the series of Loki. It dealt with free will, it dealt with a lot of issues, it made us question many things about issues that we have, and about ideologies and how we perceive things. Is it sometimes it is we deal with the issues of sometimes things are necessary evils, I guess, and we have a character of Winona Renslayer. I'm sorry about my pronunciation of that. And that, she wanted the TVA to exist and continue to exist. And we're going to see that she's possibly going to be a big bad villain in the MCU now, that to make certain that the timeline is preserved. But we have all these variations. I think what we're going to see is an example of the Council of Kings that's going to be coming. We're going to see one king that is going to prevail, the one king that was the statue of at the end of Loki, King the Conqueror, and that he is the one that come out on top. We see all kinds of different timelines that opens up so many possibilities. I think they said that 63 different branches, and it opens up so many possibilities of what the MCU can do. They can bring back, they can canonize all the Marvel movies that has been in the past. Even the ones that were a little bit cheesy back during the early 90s and 70s. They can even, think about this, they can even canonize Lou Ferrigno's Incredible Hulk now. Even the cheapo version of Daredevil that was during that time period. During, the early 90s, I mean, they can go back and they can explore so many different possibilities. Even the Captain America movie that was so cheesy. We can get those. I love those stories. I mean, come on, they're comics. Even though they're so cheapo made, I just, open it up for fan fiction too. I mean, come on, it's fan fiction movies, which I love fan fiction movies. It makes me think, I mean, it's Marvel's IP, and we're not to profit from that stuff, but I mean, Disney's IP. But I think that it really makes the process fun, and I love fan films. Some of them are so terrible. And maybe I'll review some of the terrible ones. That would be fun to do. That would be really, some of them's available on YouTube. And it's just, it really amazes me sometimes with the bad, horrible writing. We can get away. This is my thoughts. And I'm probably going to be making fan films. I want to be making my own films, with my own superheroes. And some of them are similar, some of them are not to the MCU and to DC Comics. But I do have some original ones, and they're pretty cool characters, and I hope to be able to present them, say in the next 5 years. I hope to have at least 2 or 3 films made. And but I think that it adds to the creativity of the process. It involves fans more when you allow fans to create these things. Many times people like to profit off of them and create a business off of them themselves, and that's not right. I mean, you don't own the IP on these things, and the characters need to be given credit back to the creators. But we need to be able to explore the possibilities of what's out there, and we need the freedom to be able to do that. I don't think we need the freedom to be able to, as I said, profit off of other IPs that are not yours. That's copyrighted material, to respect the law. But I look for, different stories to be told, because I love the story of, I love fan fiction. And it gets fans more involved, and there needs to be more of fan fiction, as long as we respect the IP. the intellectual property of the copyright holders. And so I look forward to the continuation in season 2 of Loki. Much respect that goes into the writing of this series. I enjoyed it a lot more than I did WandaVision, and I did The Winter Soldier and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I may cover the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, a review over that series next. I thought that was good, that it had some good messages in it. WandaVision, it was okay, but to me it was too confusing. To me the story was just not there, and probably won't be reviewing that because I don't want to be too negative over context, because it's all about really appreciating the art with me and seeing what's being created, and we'll understand it all, I guess, as they put everything, Marvel puts everything into continuity. Well, I went on and long enough here, that's for certain, and I want to say that I really enjoyed this series. It was very pleasant to be able to cover it here this day, and we've went on for a good while, haven't we? But I guess that hey, I just wanted to discuss what the Loki series meant to me, and I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you'll I hope you'll subscribe to my channel, as I have more content that's going to be coming out. I'm working on about 2 or 3 different videos right now, and I usually use, as I said, free content that's not copyrighted in my videos, simply because that, well, it's just the way I am. I don't like to use images that are copyrighted. I know there's fair use, but those could be murky lines. So if you want to support the channel, I would be happy for you to do that. Please do, and help my channel grow. I will be talking to you guys later, and remember to keep it exclusively comics. Bye bye.